This B Podcast Network show is presented by IXL. IXL's all-inclusive online teaching and learning platform simplifies edtech needs and accelerates achievement in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts. IXL delivers personalized learning across a comprehensive pre-K-12 curriculum, including math, language arts, science, and social studies, and it helps you assess student performance through actionable real-time insights at every level of your school or district. This one solution performs work that typically requires dozens of different tools. Want to find out why so many leading districts trust IXL? Visit ixl.com/BE. That's ixl.com/BE. We're proud to be sponsored by MyFlex Learning. MyFlex Learning is a scheduling platform that helps middle and high schools meet the individual needs of all students. Schools can easily create and manage time for flex blocks, win time, activity periods, RTI, counselor and teacher appointments, and much more. And with its built-in accountability tool and reporting features, MyFlex Learning solves your challenges around getting kids where they need to be and understanding how flex time is spent. Make your flex time work for you. Visit myflexlearning.com/BE to learn more and receive $500 off the first year. That's myflexlearning.com/BE.
People are expecting quite a bit.
This is your time.
You want to win. You're going to be like this.
There are no shortcuts in life.
You'll get better because you make each other better.
The inches we need are everywhere around us.
I know plenty of people that are capable. I know fewer people that are willing.
You have to believe it to do it.
Now, what are you going to do?
Welcome, everybody, to Sideline Sessions on the B Podcast Network. Thanks so much for being a part of our premiere episode here as we kick off this brand new series. We've been working on it a long time, and I'm really thrilled to launch this and bring this into the network. If you're a coach in youth, scholastic, or amateur sports, this is definitely the podcast for you. And we also expect to bring valuable insights to parents, administrators, all other stakeholders that are really interested in sporting competitions of all kinds at the youth level, the school level, amateur level. I'm sure there's going to be some tidbits, even if you're in the pro level here as well. We're planning to talk to all kinds of coaches, trailblazing professional coaches, those who have trained gold medal Olympians, founders of elite youth programs, a lot more. We're going to hear their stories, how they got where they are, and also discuss their ideas to bring out the best in your athletes and student athletes. So today, with all that said, we have a guest who's very much on brand. As the very first guest on this show, we have somebody who's made a career out of being the first in a number of positions. In 2005, Dr. Jenifer Welter became the first female coach in NFL history when she coached linebackers for the Arizona Cardinals. She also was the first woman to play a contact position in men's professional football when she signed as a running back with the Texas Revolution, which is a professional indoor team. And she had a distinguished career in women's pro football as well, a two-time world champion with the U.S., eight-time Pro Bowler. She's a culture shift expert. She has a master's in sports psychology, PhD in psychology, and she's our guest here today. Jen Welter, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing for.
In my work, I've collaborated directly with hundreds of educators to support their success. Do you know which of their edtech frustrations comes up time and again? The sheer number of tools out there and the difficulty of knowing which ones schools like theirs are using to get results. IXL is different. Not only does it perform the functions of dozens of tools, it's currently delivering results for 1 in 4 U.S. students, including those in 95 of the top 100 districts. Another major pain point that comes up: when a school is excited to implement a new tool only to find out the teachers hate it. Yikes. It helps to know that IXL is loved and trusted by more than 1 million teachers, saving them time on prep work while enabling them to better support student learning. IXL is research proven to accelerate achievement. Studies across 45 states show that IXL schools outperform non-IXL schools on state assessments. And independent research from Johns Hopkins University verifies that IXL meets ESSA Tier 1 standards. With those results combined with IXL's teacher-friendly reputation, what more could you ask for? If you have a goal to increase achievement for all students, make sure to find out what IXL can do for you. Visit IXL.com/BE for a demo. That's IXL.com/BE.
For youth sports and the competitive landscape, I think we need more conversations like this. So cheers to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we've been thinking about this series for such a long time, thinking, okay, how do we start putting it together? We have content, as our listeners may already know, for school leadership and for, leadership coaches and teachers and parents and all across the spectrum, right? All kinds of learning and development positions. We said, you know what? We need to have sports coaches here too. So yeah, let's jump into it. And let's start with just your journey. How did just kind of even going back to youth, right? Did you just have a general love of sports? Was it always about football? Kind of how did you start out along the pathway to where eventually made a career in this?
Well, I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida. So if anybody's familiar with Florida football, it is Friday Night Lights. And
Yes.
as a kid, I remember watching the players out on the field and thinking that the football players looked like superheroes. And I wanted to be a superhero. As simple as that. I just wanted to be I wanted to be among them. And it was the first place in the world that somebody told me boys and girls could do different things. And so it wasn't like it always had to be football for me, but it was kind of like that sport I loved from afar. Played everything else pretty much that didn't height me out, right? Like, I mean, my top height is 5'2", so
Mhm.
I was a really good volleyball player at one time, and then everybody got tall. My main sports were tennis, soccer, softball, and then I went to college and played rugby because it was the closest I could get to football. So learned how to tackle in rugby, got recruited for the under 23 national team, at which time they also figured out I was only 5'2". Did not make the US national team and got recruited from a flag football league I was playing in to try out for this tackle football team. And I made it, and I promised myself that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Like, this was the sport I was meant to do, and I was going to figure out how to integrate it in my life on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. I know there was a number of things you did, particularly with respect to you, of course, I'm sure were synthesizing prior evidence and the reality you saw before you with your goals and your ambitions and the things you wanted to achieve, and saying, okay, there's a lot of things you did to prepare yourself for the opportunity that eventually you would have to coach in men's professional football. What are some of the things you were doing along the way to put yourself in position to be ready when the time was right?
Well, first and foremost, I have to correct you on one thing. I never imagined that I could coach football because women didn't do that. And so I often speak on the importance of on representation and how much it matters, and how much being able to see someone that looks like you doing what you want to do, to be able to, kind of picture yourself doing that, right? Like, to
Yeah.
picture yourself being on the sidelines. I didn't have that kind of vision. But what I did do to prepare myself for whatever my life was going to look like was that I got my PhD while playing football.
Mhm.
So my life for a very long time was work by day, play football by night, go to school by very late night. And so to me, it was, if I did that, then I could take my practical experience as a player, marry that with my PhD in psychology, and become a unique value proposition to the sport. Someone who had a different and valuable perspective. And, I think that when we're building teams, when we're looking at staffs, when any of those things, that's what you want. You want additional valuable perspectives so that you have multiple voices in a room. And I am just thankful, that men, actually, some great men recognized potential in me and gave me opportunities to step up to those challenges. it was playing in men's pro football that opened up the door to then coaching in indoor football, which is what I did before the NFL.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds as though in a lot of ways, you're consistently doing different things to prepare, right? Getting education, thinking about at least opening yourself up to a variety of possibilities, taking advantage of opportunities that came, as a player. And then a lot of the other things developed organically, right? It was okay. Now I'm here. Now what might be next? Where does that lead? How did it end up happening when it eventually did say, okay, as you mentioned, I didn't imagine that I could be coaching because it's never been done before. I didn't see anybody doing it. Somebody else there had to be people that would allow you and help you to get into that position. How did it end up happening?
Yeah, so I was playing on the Texas Revolution and I played a whole season, and getting hit by those guys every day for a year was one of those things. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to be a great teammate, taught me how to see things differently. I went from in women's football being on the US national team, so arguably, obviously, one of the best players in the world, to now I'm scratching and clawing and fighting to be on the practice squad. And so it was this challenge of how do I continue to add value to a team where I'm not the baddest one out there?
Mhm.
Well, I was smart and I would, hey, this is what they're going to do next time, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a joke. Like, I mean, like in a loving way, the guys would jokingly, it wasn't a joke that I was helping them. They would jokingly say, like, she's like our little coach on the sidelines. And I would jokingly say back, yeah, it's like Marvin the Martian. I get to take all of this great knowledge and put it in your big body. So we kind of naturally did it anyway. But again, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm good. It was former Dallas Cowboy Wendell Davis, who in the off season was hired as the new head coach. And when he was there, I walked into an event that he and some of the Texas Revolution players were on and when they saw me, they picked me up and tossed me around like football, because relative to them, I am one. And Wendell said, who is this girl that all my guys love? And they laughed. They're like, Coach, that's your running back. And I remember Wendell telling me later, he's like, Jen, I knew everything about you, but I never imagined that those guys would love you like that. It's like, I can teach you how to coach football, but I can't teach that. And
Mhm.
he said, like, he called me the next day after he met me. He sat me down, grilled me on football. I mean, everything. Right. And I think I'm done. Right. I'm done with this team. I'm not getting hit again. So basically, or getting hit by these guys again every day for a year. So I basically just was brutally honest. You want to know why they're not playing well? Well, these guys, you say that meals are included. A $5 meal voucher is not cutting it. They're hungry. Right. Like, I was just really honest. And apparently that hit a chord with him, because he called me the next day and said, all my defensive coordinator and I could talk about is how you had to coach this football team. And I said, no. And he goes, what do you mean, no? And I said, no, girls don't coach football. I'm not doing that. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said, no. And I hung up on him. And the next day he called me back and told me about myself. He said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity and you were taking this job? I said, yeah. He said, good. I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit. And so really had no choice. And I am so thankful for Wendell seeing that in me before I even saw it in myself.
Yeah, and I was when I'm going to ask you what coaching is to you, and right, and what coaching means to you, and isn't that story such a great illustration of so much of what coaching is, to see in somebody else the thing that they don't yet see in themselves, and to take a stand for it, right, and to advocate and say, look, you're not getting out of this, you can do this, and there's no escape.
Yep. And for me, that was it's something that we say that we do as coaches, right? You recognize
Mhm.
what makes somebody different, makes them special, put them in a position for success, and help them develop in ways that mitigate or minimize their liabilities. So you can teach certain elements, but certain things also impress people. And it was really the relationships that stood out to Wendell and why he made that decision. And I like to tell that story because I think so often we assume that people have all of the answers and none of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And even for me, I tell people as a coach, you got to be coachable first and foremost, right? How can I lead you somewhere if I don't know where you're trying to go? You personally, right? And how do I lead you somewhere if I don't know what you've been through or how you learn or what your background is or what your experiences are? Have you been through an injury? What's holding you back? If I'm not coachable, if I'm not there to gather that information and use it to maximize someone's success, then I'm going to be basically blindfolded throwing darts at a board. And some will hit and some will hit well and some will miss big. And my goal is to, even if everything doesn't work as a player, to be a good person in the process.
Yeah. As you've now had been involved in coaching for several years, have you developed your own thoughts on what you believe coaching is or coaching's purpose, right? Just kind of that foundational definition of this is what it means to be a coach.
Well, I have a philosophy on how great coaches are people that have great relationships. And I think to be a great coach, it's really about empathy and developing coaching relationships found where the foundation is trust and love. And I tell people that, and I'm like, listen, people talk about perfection. Perfection is only possible in intention, right? I can look at somebody's tape and I can do my very best to give you the very best breakdown that I have. But they're also changing things too, right? So I can be perfect in my intention. And then we have a relationship so that we can talk and get better and know that if I didn't tell you something, it wasn't like I was holding something back. I did the best that I could. So our intention can be perfect. Our execution can get incrementally better. And it's a coach's job to make a player better as a person and as a performer. And those two are not inseparable. Now, sometimes you won't have that tighter relationship with each of your players, but it should be the intention, because unless we're looking at athletes as whole people, then we're missing the magic, because ultimately as coaches, we have to know not every player that we ever encounter is going to go on to make millions of dollars and play at the highest level. Just true. So what then can you do as a coach? You can have an impact on who this person is in their life. And that to me is the beauty of sport in terms of its role in our development as humans, is that we want to find places and spaces where we bring the best out of people. And for me, I've coached everyone from guys in the NFL to special needs kids in Snoop Special Stars. And every single one of them, first of all, has a right to be out on that field and to find their best self and to find an end zone dance. And it's my job to give them the very best that I can while I'm there and to connect with them as people too.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it certainly aligns with, I think, some of the qualities that stood out in you as a player that made other coaches recognize, hey, this person could be a coach, because there's relationships there and there's that ability to generate those. And of course, on in a sport like football, you have how many people on a team, right? And only so many opportunities to know each person to a certain extent, but yet having that relationship mentality and mindset. And another word comes to mind is the authenticity of it. I know one of the topics that you speak about is authentic leadership, right? The power of that. And I'm wondering, how did you find that voice, like the authentic voice in yourself, especially being in situations like these where you may be the only person in the room that is a female that looks like yourself, or so
Maybe.
you're developing those relationships, you're showing your authentic self, but you're also understanding that there's a lot of different dynamics at play, right? And of course the power is in that authenticity, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't make it easy, right?
The first thing I'll say is some rooms are harder than others. Some people really value that. Other people are advocates for the status quo. And
Mhm.
I think that's where you navigate your places and spaces. For me, though, the person that I give credit for really putting that authenticity first is a guy that anybody in the football world should know is Terry Glenn. And unfortunately, we lost TG back in 2017, and he was a big part in my book, and he passed away before I was able to give him a copy. So it always hit my heart that I wonder if he knew how much he meant to me, or what a gift he gave me in giving me the
Yeah.
confidence to walk into a room authentically. And
Mhm.
he coached with me at the Texas Revolution, and he was so real, right? He just loved the game, and he wanted everybody to get better. And, he shined on the football field. And TG was a quiet guy. So he didn't say a ton, but when he said something, it said something. So you really had to pay attention. And it's like 6 a.m. in indoor football, like we had to have the guys practice before work so that then they could go to work after. And I remember TG came up to me and he said, "Jen, I've been thinking a lot about you going to the NFL. And the best advice I can give you is to be 100% authentic." Said, if you're the same person with those guys that you were here with us every day, they will absolutely love you. But if you're fake in any way, they will sense it and eat you alive. And so I really took that as permission to be myself, and how important it was to not try and be fake, not try and be somebody I wasn't. There's a lot of guys there. I was never going to out man a man of being a man. And frankly, they didn't need another man. They needed me. Right. And
Right.
they needed me to walk in and look at things as a former player, as a female, as a PhD, all of those, whatever it was that was me and different, that's what they needed. And that's what not only did I strive to, but I strive to bring with me in every situation. Some easier than others, but I think that there's real value in really just being honest about who you are, what you know, and what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure your degrees in psychology proved very helpful, particularly with your emphasis on relationships, right, and how to relate to people. And I'm wondering if you also did you feel like you were able to develop some type of a mental edge from the fact that even prior to ever getting involved in men's football, you still would have in your career been an underdog in the sense that you were a great player, but you were one of the smallest people on the field still, right? Even in the women's game. You had to figure out different ways to be effective and to gain an advantage and to be smarter than the next person and to think a little bit ahead of the next thing, right? And you had certain physical gifts, but in other ways it wasn't like you were just out there running everybody over and all of that, right? So even then you were, I'm sure, developing a lot of the things that became advantageous later on that maybe, who knows, I mean, I don't know how much more difficult it would have been if that hadn't been the case, because and it was maybe things that you were preparing for mentally before you knew what it eventually would be used for, but just thinking about how do I outthink my opponent, right? How do I think more about the game and think about that? And then, of course, that helps you down the road be able to teach as well.
Yeah, I think each one of us has to really realize who we are and what we're about on a football field or in
Hmm.
whatever field of play that is. For me, I know, one example I can give is when I was first playing, I had an idea what a football player looked like, and she was everything that was not me. They were big and strong and and they wore black and they looked real intimidating. And I remember kind of trying that. And, at 5'2", it's not scary. It's a little funny, right? Like I wasn't scaring anybody. No one was going to be like, "Ooh, she's intimidating." And when I realized that like leverage is actually an advantage in football. So we say low man or low women wins. So I had a natural advantage that I was losing in trying to be something that I wasn't. And I was not going to outbig anybody, but I could out little, out fast, out tough. And so once I leaned into really my differences that were my superpowers, then I became great. I went from good to great and greater the more I focused on that. And I think too often we lose that, right? We have an ideal and it's not actual, right? And you have to focus on the things that you can control. That's one of the things we do in sports psychology. And one of the things that you cannot control is height, right? I'm not going to be able to change that. Now, can I work to develop a better vertical leap? Yes. Can I work to get a quicker first step? Yes. All of those things are under my control, but I can't.
And now a quick break for a word from our sponsor, MyFlex Learning. Let's talk about flex time in schools. The potential benefits to our students make it totally worth exploring. There's more time for personalized learning, increased choice and agency for students, and the increased engagement that comes along with it, dedicated time for intervention, and overall, as school leaders, it provides you and your faculty more tools to increase academic achievement. But the implementation and management of flex time can be a challenge. Tricky logistics and a lack of clear accountability systems can prevent teachers from buying in. It can hold you back from ensuring students make good use of their time. That's why I'm pleased to share that MyFlex Learning provides a solution to these challenges and more. MyFlex Learning helps you create and manage flexible time for any purpose. And with the seamless SIS integration, a student locator, flexible daily rostering, and intuitive mobile app, it eliminates the common challenges of implementation and management. If you want to see for yourself, visit myflexlearning.com/BE to learn more and receive $500 off the first year of use. That's myflexlearning.com/BE. You'll learn all about MyFlex Learning, what it can do for your school, and you'll receive a $500 off offer for your first year. Check it out.
Sit and cry about the fact that I'm 5'2", right? That is not going to change. So it is not productive energy. The energy and the place in the space that I can do real stuff is by focusing on making myself the best performer that I can. And then knowing things from a psychological perspective, how you carry yourself, keep your head up, your chest up, never not showing certain physical weaknesses were things that I became very good at and very practiced at. And I convinced people that I was the crazy American. I mean, that I was indestructible and I was in really good shape. And I carried that mentality and knew people were watching at all times. So never wanted them to see me anyway, but looking like I was ready for the next play.
I think a lot of that goes back to, once again, the authenticity, being yourself, figuring out who are you, what are the unique qualities that you bring to the picture, right? And in a team sport, a team environment, whether you're a coach or a player, it takes a lot of different components to make it an effective organization, right? If everybody's the same, there's some things you're going to be missing. And a lot of that, of course, would be coming, whether you're on the team and maybe you're a captain or a team leader, but especially as a coach and understanding the different paths that coaches take. It's how do you earn credibility? How do you earn the respect of your team? I think it's a great topic to touch on, especially with respect to if we have listeners who are coaching at a variety of levels where they may not have yet put as much thought into it as naturally needs to be done as you get to the college and certainly the professional levels, and the kind of age gap, experience, all those other things close, right? And it's, how do I earn it? There's highly successful professional coaches that have never been players at that level, but there are things that they do that earn them credibility with their team and the respect of their players. And there's others who may have been a great player and they lose it. And so it's not about, and we've talked about the relationships a lot, and of course that's an important piece. So there are other things that come to mind that you've learned, or certainly that you've observed in other coaches that you've worked with, to say, okay, these are the things, when I see a coach doing this and this, immediately I'm bought in, or vice versa. When I see a coach doing these other things, I can tell it's not going to work out so well.
I think honesty is really important. People don't like fake, right? I tell people all the time, when I know something, I'm very direct, right? This is what it is. When I don't know it, I'm also very direct, like, oh, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've had people ask me about coaching quarterbacks. I do not coach quarterbacks. I
Right.
know how to make a quarterback's life difficult. That's what I know how to do, right? You've got to get somebody else for that. And I tell people, and they're like, oh, you so easily pass that off. And I'm like, of course I did. Now, I could help a kid who's never thrown a football before be better, but I can't help a quarterback who's practiced quarterback be better unless it's on X, Y, and Z, right? Maybe focusing, or, making sure they're calling out route combos as they do it. But I'm not going to get there in their mechanics and things. The only thing I can do is screw them up at that point. But I tell people, I'm like, I will very quickly tap out in a conversation where I am not the authority, because if someone tells me they know everything about everything, I already know they're lying about something. And now, instead of looking at the places where they can help, where they can move mountains, where they can be impressive, I'm looking for the place where they're full of BS, right?
Right.
And naturally do that. And I did that as a player too. And so a lot of the things when it comes to earning respect, and I'm glad you said earn respect, because a lot of times people will say command respect, and I go, oh, cringe. You
Right.
cannot command respect. You have to earn respect through your actions, through your consistency, through your communication, through your relationship, through being coachable, right? Like, that's one I will go back to, is like, I think it's really important to get to know people before you come out and you're just like, well, this is what we're going to do. Okay, well, this is what you're going to do. You're going to throw the ball up in the end zone and all of your receivers are 5 foot. Did you check that first? Because, that high ball may not work, right? Like, you really have to know what you're working with and be honest about it, and then be able to adapt and overcome. People respect that a lot. Having good communications, being open to those connections, developing relationships, those are respect. And then consistency. If I give you my word, I keep my word, because the second you don't, the respect is out the window. How do I tell you to do something and I don't hold somebody else accountable, right? How do I disrespect you as a human and expect you to respect me as a human, right? Like, I think a lot of those things just go from being very honest and upfront. And I mean, I have literally said that to people, like, I will tap out. I don't know. This is what it is. And then going back to what I said earlier, which I think every coach should keep in mind, keep this as a focus. Our intention is the one place that we can be perfect. We can have perfect intentions, perfect intention on a play. You can do this, that, the other. And then together we'll work on incrementally improving execution. Step by step, we read faster, we move faster, we change direction faster, whatever that is, and we'll get better at execution. And even we'll get information that we didn't know before. We game planned for a pocket passer and now they have a mobile quarterback. Well, it was not my intention to tell you we had a pocket passer and now he's mobile. It was not my intention. It's not like, oh, I'm going to really mess him up today and give him the wrong information, right? My intention was that we had a pocket passer and we were going to cage it and we were going to be real aggressive in that way, not let it break the pocket, blah, 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 blah. We were going to do it X way. Now, all of a sudden, we have a different quarterback. We may need different people playing, right? You may need somebody who's a little faster on the edges than you thought before. We thought we were going to big body and compress them down. Now we need somebody who is faster and won't get beat to the outside, right? My intention was so-and-so, we're going to play the majority of the snaps. Now we have a different problem that will require us to move within that. In that, I, as the coach, have to communicate that. And it's not just, oh, you're terrible, get out of there. No, it's, hey, you know what? This guy's faster than we planned for. We need some speed at the outside. And just even things like that, giving somebody an understanding of what we're doing and what we're thinking and why we're making decisions shows a whole lot of respect. And in that, a lot of the times players will give you respect. And then after that is, again, communicating those things and hopefully doing a good job communicating throughout the processes.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the communication, because that's the essential part of the intention, right? Is how do I know what your intentions are if you're not communicating them to me, telling me, okay, what's your vision for what we're trying to do here? What are our goals? What do you see as an athlete? What do you see for me, going all the way back to when you started getting coaching? But are you intending to create opportunities for me here on the team in the future? How is my time here a well spent investment in whatever's to come next? And at every level, and particularly every level before the professional level, right, there's a certain number of high percentage of those athletes and student athletes that this is their final level. This is it for them. And there's others that, okay, maybe I'm going to go on to whatever's the next level, but I still need to believe that this is a good use of my time, that the commitment and investment I'm putting in here is worthwhile, that I'm part of something bigger than myself, that, right, all of those various things that when they break down, it's very hard to keep an organization together, because it's, what's my motivation, for example, to be bench player on a high school team, right? Well, I need to believe that there's more going on there than just whatever is my own eventual outcome, because what role is that? And that's about communicating that and understanding the importance of that. And, we've all seen those thin sidelines, right? Where you say, man, this is a really big school. How come there's so few players on this team? Well, something's not happening there to make everybody on that team feel like they're a part of that team, and feel like they're an important part, and they're contributing to whatever happens. If the team wins a game, even if you weren't the one that was on the field scoring a touchdown, you contributed to that. And again, relationships, communication, right? Intentionality.
Right. And then understanding the individuals on the team, not just what they can do, but who they are. I consulted with a cross country team years ago, and they were having trouble with unity, right? And it was interesting because the top runner's best friend was on the team, but was the slowest runner. And it was kind of a struggle, right? I'm leaving my friend behind, this, that, and the other. Well, it turns out that runner was really running because it was her best friend. It wasn't her passion, but she was fine. She was solid. But she was a great artist. And I told the coach, I was like, okay, so get her more involved. Well, I don't know how to get her involved. Have her come up with a mascot for the cross country team. She draws, right? Yep. Great. Have her design a shirt for the team that they could wear, whether it be game day or whatever, and get her involved that way. Because think about how happy her best friend, who is your captain, who is your fastest runner, would be to be able to rep her friend's shirt.
Right.
And she was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Well, you never thought to ask. But there's different ways to get different people involved and to add value. But you have to have those conversations. You have to be willing to dig in and find those talents. I would be looking for those talents in my teammates. Do we have somebody who's great with lyrics? Great. Can you do a theme song for us? What are the other ways that we can bring your talents into this atmosphere and let you shine? Maybe you're shining. I mean, you might be a starter and have those talents. Great. You might be somebody else. Great. But we are more than just what we do on a field, no matter how good we are at it. So how can we get more people to take pride in what we're doing here? And that becomes being open as a coach and giving some of that ownership back to your team. And the more that they have voice and they have involvement, the more likely when you say, okay, this is how we're going to do this element, that they're going to be like, okay, because you gave them freedom in certain aspects of the team, right? Some areas you can't, but some you damn sure can. And I think that's important to remember, that those things are important too.
Yeah. Jen, you also have founded an organization called Gridiron Girls. There's multiple R's in there. I don't
And
but
is GER because no one was giving girls opportunities.
tell us about that.
It is confidence through football and teaching girls there is no game they cannot play and no field they do not belong in or on. We've done, I think, about 57 girls' camps across the country now. And it gives me, a tangible way to be the woman I needed when I was growing up. I think it's important. I don't think that there are enough visible female role models. And I say visible very intentionally. There are great women doing a lot of things, but if the women don't see them, they don't know that, or the girls don't see them, they don't know that they can be them. So for me, I took that as a challenge and I thought of it as if I wasn't the woman who was there to change this for them, then the wrong woman was the first female to coach in the NFL.
Are there what progress have you seen or maybe created? Maybe it hasn't just happened in girls football from the time when you played till now. And I'm sure we have parents and coaches who have daughters or work with girls who haven't maybe thought about this as a sport.
Flag football is the fastest growing sport, point blank. It is the one that has the furthest to go, which is why you see exponential growth right now for girls in flag football specifically.
Right.
You can now go to college on a football scholarship as a flag football player. So girls, for the first time in the history of the sport, can change the trajectory of their lives through education by playing football. That's a game changer, right? Point blank, guys who played their way out of such and such, girls can play their way out too, or their way up into where they want to be in this world. And that's special because that was never there for football. You could do it in other sports, but it wasn't there for football. And so that's the biggest change. And that happened 3 years ago. The NAIA was the first league to add. Then you had the NJCAA. And next, the Atlantic Conference is adding in 2025. So just really very fast growing. More and more sports are offering high school flag football as a varsity sport. It used to be that there were just 4, but now so many are adding that I couldn't give you a list of all the states off the top of my head anymore. And so it's really exciting. And, I've helped launch programs. That's really what Gridiron Girls does. For a lot of programs, they might have had a boys league and then they wanted to expand to girls. And so we would partner with them and help create an environment where the girls felt good. They wanted to come out on the field and then, hey, the girls are yours, right? Like, this is your league. So we helped attract them, but then you're going to be the one who, as I lovingly say, I was the sizzle, but you'll be the substance on a day-to-day basis. But I was able to help with my team come in and set the standard that the girls knew everything that they needed to be able to step in any game of street ball, any game of, PE or whatever, or another co-ed camp and know that you're not fundamentally behind. You at least could get the fundamentals to feel good. And it was in an environment where confidence was put into everything that we do. And so just for me, those are the important things to do. And that's how we shift culture. And so, you'll see flag football as an Olympic sport likely in 2028. And, to me, that's about as good as it gets in terms of progress.
Yeah. And for listeners who may not be familiar, flag football is a fast growing sport for boys and girls in a lot of places, becoming a formalized varsity sport rather than an intramural sport, and gaining a lot of traction and having a lot of participation. So, but it's great in particular for girls to have more and more opportunities there to have programs that are designed for them and with intentionality. And I think as one of our kind of last topics here, that certainly seems to be near to you, is not only the opportunity, but the obligation that coaches and people in positions of influence have to create opportunities for the next group, whether that is expanding opportunities for people who haven't had it before, or thinking ahead and finding untapped talent, or individuals who haven't been included before, and how do we get them involved? You mentioned the example, with the track team and the logo. There's a million different ways for that to happen, but to say, okay, not only is it smart from a coaching perspective to say what can we do differently, right? Because if we're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing, maybe if we're lucky enough that we just have better athletes than everybody else, then that'll be fine. But other than that, we probably need to try something new. But two, the reason I'm in this position to have influence is so that I can use that for a positive. What do you think about that, or how would you pose that to other coaches to think about?
I mean, you just said it, right? Like, you are, as a coach, you're the person who was entrusted in having that role in somebody's life. And that role, yes, it's sports, but it's life. And the sports lessons, people always say that sports can change your lives and can do all these things. It can, but it has to be done with intention to ensure that those opportunities are positive ones. There are a lot of not great human first coaches out there who have tremendous technical skill, but have not yet turned the page and to realize that they have the opportunity to change someone's life by being a great human. And I don't buy into the fact that it's just your job to get them to play better. I don't, especially if you're not talking at the top of the top professional level. And not most of those kids are not going to make the top level. You have an opportunity to be a great influence on these kids where they are at the age that they are. And I'll tell you, people will tell you, I'll put as much energy into coaching special needs kids or girls as I do the boys. When I'm out there, it's not close as good enough. You deserve to be coached well, and you deserve to be treated well in the process. And those two are not inseparable. And I think we need to get away from the thinking that you just got to grind them out. Why? You can get the same work ethic and be good to people in the process. You don't have to cuss them out. You don't have to throw things. You don't have to tear them down. You don't have to tear them down to build them up. Like, you can actually just be honest and push people, but you don't have to pressure them to the point that you break some, because we lose too many kids from sports because of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, one last thing we need to get on the record here. So you shattered the glass sideline, right, in the NFL. Also, I believe it was 2020 when you were the first female coach in Madden. So which one means more to you?
Well, I think they work hand in hand. I love that we were able to do that with Madden, because you're reaching a whole bunch of different kids. There are kids that maybe never had an opportunity to have me as their coach, but they could play me in Madden. And I have absolutely had kids who knew me from Madden that didn't know I coached from the Cardinals. And so I think it's really important when we look at how do we shift culture, right? It's about shifting it into multiple points of entry. In any place that we can open people's minds, that means we're opening possibilities and likely opening doors. And so to me, it's not about one or the other, though I think the cool factor probably goes to Madden.
Yeah, how many players, right, that grew up playing the game that get drafted into the league and say, well, this is when I know it's real, is when I'm in that game, because that's what really makes it official. Before we close, anything else you're working on now that you'd like to tell listeners about, and where can listeners learn more about your work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I do a lot of things. I think that's just being a creator in life. The more opportunities we have to impact people, the better. The majority of my business, I spend time now speaking as a public speaker when I'm not coaching. So I try and keep a balance. Told my mom when I was a kid that I was either going to be an athlete or an actress, and I get to do a little bit of both now. And so that's a really good life balance for me. And I think we need more of those positive voices to lift people up and show them what's possible in this world. So I'm the best speaker you never had. I'm just kidding. But so that's a good one. A couple other projects I can't really talk about, but that's a good one to focus on.
Excellent. So listeners will have the links below in the show notes to jenwelter.com and to Jen's social media handles. So please do check those out, and you can learn more about those projects when they're available. Please do also subscribe to the show, Sideline Sessions, to hear the rest of our fall season. We have a number of great episodes coming up from coaches from all across the sporting landscape, some really interesting things that you won't want to miss. Also, do visit bpodcast.network to learn about all of our other shows. We have about 30 of them now, so there's plenty there for you. Dr. Jen Welter, thanks so much for being on Sideline Session.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Do you want to simplify your school's technology, save teachers time, and improve students' performance on state assessments? You can do it all, but don't waste another minute. Head straight to ixl.com/BE to learn how IXL's research proven teaching and learning platform can help you achieve all of these goals. That's IXL.com/BE.